So Arrow is now officially back after taking a 2-week break. We are now back in Star City for Arrow Season 7, Episode 14, otherwise entitled Brothers and Sisters. So let's jump into the review.
You're working with the man who tried to kill my entire family.
You have no idea who you're messing with. You're all gonna be wishing for the mercy of a quick death.
So this episode is a big one for the Ghost Initiative, or the Suicide Squad Mark II. This is a big episode for them. We get to see them actually fully go out on a mission. This is of course the new version of the Suicide Squad, a new version of the team with Ricardo Diaz, Joe Wilson, China White, and also Cupid. So we get to see them actually go out on a mission to look for Dante. They are continuing down the Dante mission, and this actually had me really interested because, again, there was an interesting dynamic in this episode between Oliver, Diggle, and Felicity, because obviously Oliver and Felicity are not too pleased by the fact that Diggle, well, Felicity more so than Oliver, is not particularly happy that Diggle is working with Diaz. And I like the fact that they had this little confrontation where Diggle went to Oliver and Felicity's home and told them directly that he was working with Diaz. And I actually really like the fact that Felicity goes off on one about it, but Oliver actually sticks by Diggle's side. I actually really like that, the fact that Oliver trusts Diggle and trusts that Diggle is doing the right thing and is doing the right move to achieve a better goal. I actually thought that was really interesting. I thought that Oliver was going to go by Felicity's side, but he doesn't. He sticks by his man, he sticks by Diggle, and I was very happy to see that, because Oliver and Diggle, you know, their friendship, that is the, you know, one of the core things about Arrow, and, you know, just to see Oliver stick by Diggle's side, I was very happy to see that, because realistically, we all know Diggle is kind of doing the right thing here. But just seeing the Ghost Initiative finally being unleashed, like, we got a little tease of them in episode 11, but we actually got to see them fully go out on a mission here, and I really enjoyed that. You know, I'm a big fan of Joe Wilson, so I like seeing him kick some ass. That was cool. China White, it's nice to have her back on the show. Don't love Cupid, but she's barely in it, to be honest. It doesn't really matter. But Diaz is a big player in this, and I really like seeing Diaz, especially because, you know, I really like Kirk Acevedo a lot. I think he's really awesome in this role. I've always loved Diaz, and, you know, seeing him just being out in the wild a little bit, just interacting, you know, the way he talks to Diggle, the way he talks to the other members of the Ghost Initiative, the way he talks to Lila, I think he just plays it really to a T. So seeing him interacting with the real world again, I thought was really fun. And we actually get the reveal of Dante in this episode. Obviously, Dante has been teased ever since really the beginning of the season with the Longbow Hunters. We've been waiting to see who this Dante character is. Now, if you know the comics, you know Dante. He is the leader of the villainous Ninth Circle, and I'm sure we will get some more hints towards the Ninth Circle as the season goes on, maybe going into Season 8. I think we might see some more of that going on. But we do get the official reveal of Dante, and he's really awesome. Now, this is kind of jumping ahead a bit to the end of the episode, but we actually get to see Dante fight in this episode, and he is insane. Like, he is able to go toe-to-toe with Oliver instantly. Like, he can just jump into this action scene with Oliver, and he is really toe-to-toe. The way he has these knives, he's blocking all these arrow shots. It's really entertaining to watch as, you know, as an action piece. And the way he jumps off that bridge at the end and just throws the knife, it was awesome. And a little tidbit as well, the actor who is playing the character of Dante this season, and potentially next season, he is actually a professional swordsman in real life. So, you know, if you're wondering why, you know, it looked that cool and why it was that good, it's because the guy who was portraying the character of Dante is actually a real swordsman, and I think you can really see that going through the action sequences. And you know, I wasn't too excited about Dante before this episode because we just didn't have anything to go off of with him. We didn't have any, you know, indications of who the character was, what his face was. You know, we didn't have a face to the name. But now that we do, and now we've seen kind of what he's capable of, I'm pretty excited about what Dante is going to bring to Arrow. Now, we do have another little Felicity, Laurel, you know, dynamic in this episode, which I did enjoy, as always. I do love their friendship. Felicity was a bit annoying in this episode, I won't lie. Her acting in the very opening scene, where she has that nightmare, not great. But I do feel like Felicity was a bit annoying in this episode, because she basically, after she finds out that Diggle's working with Diaz, and Diaz is now out in the field, she basically gets this idea in her head that she's like, oh, I can hack the bomb in the back of his neck and blow him up. And she gets in contact with Laurel and is like, oh yeah, Laurel, why don't we go blow up Diaz's head? And even Laurel, who, you know, previously was a supervillain, even is like, come on, Felicity, it's a bit extreme. Like, you know, he's still in Argus custody. He's not, like, out in the wild. So I really like the fact that even Laurel was more restrained than Felicity was, and I like the fact that even Laurel was just like, that's not really necessary. Like, is it really worth the consequences? And, like, the fact that Laurel was saying this to Felicity, I think speaks volumes to kind of how drastic Felicity was in this episode. I wasn't a big fan of Felicity. I think that, you know, I think Felicity has been a lot better this season than she has been in recent years, but she has kind of in this episode, she kind of went back into that mode where she was just being unreasonable. It did have a strong conclusion, though, where Felicity was able to basically hold Diaz basically in a position where Diggle could get him. I did enjoy that. That was fine. You know, I think that was a much stronger conclusion than, you know, Felicity basically just going off on one. Felicity actually had to kind of apologize in the end, which I think was a lot more of a stronger conclusion than what we would have got otherwise. Now, we also had Oliver and Emiko in this episode. There was a big episode for them two kind of bonding, and I enjoyed this, the fact that, you know, Renee basically drops the bomb on Oliver that, you know, oh yeah, her mother was murdered, which he didn't know about, and the fact that he was able to bond with her and actually try and, you know, get closer to her, because this is somebody who he wants to get close with, this is somebody who he wants to form a relationship with, but he is obviously very shut out by her. I like the fact that Emiko was just kind of like, you know, just pushing him aside. I don't need your help, I don't want your help, I don't want you in my life, but Oliver is just persistently trying, and I like that. I thought the fact that their dynamic was kind of fractured, I really do enjoy. And I like the fact that even Renee says to Oliver, like, she is literally the same as you. Like, she is so similar to you, you know, and he brings up a good point where he's like, you know, if back in season 1, if somebody came up to you and ripped your father's list out of your hands and tried to take control of your crusade, you would not have been happy about it. And it's a very true point. Like, Emiko is very, very stubborn, and she's very, very like Oliver, especially like Oliver in season 1. She's very, very similar to Oliver in season 1. So I feel like, you know, that kind of parallel, you know, even though Emiko doesn't want anything to do with Oliver, especially not in this point, you know, the fact that they're very, very similar, I think, is an interesting choice. Now, we did get some flash forwards in this episode. These were probably some of the weaker flash forwards we've had as of late. There wasn't really much going on. It was basically just William and Mia bonding as brother and sister. So we had Oliver and Emiko in the present day, and then we had William and Mia in the flash forwards. This was okay. It was just kind of like William and Mia just had to have these scenes together just to try and, you know, actually get some scenes and some dialogue together. And it's interesting enough, but, you know, it's kind of weird because William says, obviously we've always heard in these flash forwards that Oliver and Felicity abandoned William. But it seems like that isn't going to be the case because we see Oliver on the phone at the beginning of the episode talking to William and he's not picking up his calls. So I feel like there's something else at play here. Like, I feel like there's going to be something else where maybe the grandparents just cut off communication with Oliver and Felicity. I don't know if that's going to be the case, but I just don't buy the fact that, you know, Oliver and Felicity abandoned William because it's, as far as we can see, that is not the case. So, you know, this was all okay, it was fine, but the most confusing part about all these flash forwards, and this completely baffles me, I'm probably going to have to do a video on this because I really don't know what to make of this, so make sure you let me know what you think about this in the comments down below. What's going on with John Diggle Jr.? Because he says in this episode that John Diggle is his adopted father. So this can't be JJ then, because JJ, as in, you know, baby John Diggle Jr., who we've seen this season, like, that is John's naturally born son. Like, that is John and Lila's son. So, this version of Connor Hawke, like, Connor Hawke in the future timeline, can't be JJ because that doesn't line up. Unless we find out all of a sudden that maybe Lila had an affair, and this is somebody else's son, and Diggle didn't know about it. But I think, like, why would they do that to Lila? Because Lila's such a good character. Why would you kind of, you know, put that kind of burden on her? So I don't know what's going on here. I don't know if this is just something the writers have forgot about. I don't know if this is just a complete mistake. Because it doesn't make sense to me. Like, why would it be John Diggle's adopted son when we know that Diggle has a son? You know, because the thing is as well, we don't know what his name is. Like, it says, you know, he says his name is Connor Hawke, but is that a code name? Is his name actually John Diggle Jr. like we know it to be? It's really confusing, and I don't know where they're going with this, so make sure you let me know your thoughts. How did you receive that? Because I'm very, very confused. And then in the last 2 minutes of this episode, we got a 1-2 punch of just massive reveals, where we see that Emiko is actually working with Dante. So this didn't surprised me massively just because of my knowledge of the comics. Like, Emiko is quite a big part of Dante's storyline, so it didn't surprise me too much personally, but I feel like for people who don't know the comics, that's going to be quite a big thing to see this new big villain introduced who's been teased through all this time to be working with Emiko. So we still don't know the full story. He basically says to her, you know, Emiko, it's time for you to come home. So basically, for me, that answers the question of how Emiko was trained, because Emiko is extremely formidable as a fighter, can go toe-to-toe with Oliver like Dante can, so I think Dante is the one who trained Emiko. Now, the question now is, is Emiko actually Oliver's sister? Like, is there a mystery going on here? Is she actually just somebody else? I don't really feel like that's the case, because there is a lot of tangible evidence, especially in episode 10, about the lineage of Emiko's family. But I feel like, there's something else. There's a big mystery, and also why, like, who is Dante really? Who's the connection to Emiko? Why is she working with him? Like, I like this reveal, and it does add a lot more interest to Emiko, because I feel like over the last couple of episodes, ever since they revealed who Emiko was, they haven't really known what to do with her. She's kind of been just floating around, just kind of popping in every now and then. They haven't really known what to do with Emiko. She hasn't really had much to do. So I think giving her this connection to Dante, who's this potential new big bad going forward, it gives her a lot more to do and makes her, personally, for me, a lot more interesting. And then we have Diaz sent back to Slabside again, and then we see somebody pour gasoline all throughout his cell and chuck a lighter through it and burn Diaz alive. So somebody kills Diaz at the end of this episode. So Ricardo Diaz is now dead. Ricardo Diaz has been killed in this episode. So goodbye Kirk Acevedo, goodbye Ricardo Diaz. I mean, I have to say, I'm really sad. I put out a tweet about this. I'm really going to miss Kirk Acevedo on the show. I'm really going to miss Diaz because, like I say, I loved him and I love Kirk so much as an actor. I really respect him. So I'm really sad to see Kirk Acevedo go, but damn, was that a pretty big shock. Like, he burns alive in this episode. Like, we see him just screaming on fire inside of his cell. Now, I guess the question is who kills him. Given the fact that this follows the Emiko Dante reveal, I feel like this was Emiko. But could it have been Felicity? Could it have been Laurel? Like, I don't know. So let me know your thoughts as well. Who do you think killed Diaz? Like I said, I think it's got to be like Dante and Emiko who did it, because, again, that's what makes sense given the scene followed it. But yeah, Diaz is dead. Diaz is gone. So goodbye Diaz, I guess, and rest in peace. Overall, I thought this was a good episode of Arrow. I did enjoy it. Like I said, I do have some negatives, like the flash forwards weren't too particularly great. The Felicity stuff was a bit annoying. But seeing the Ghost Initiative actually in action was really cool. And for Diaz's final episode, I thought this was a great send-off for him. He had so many great moments in this episode, and I really liked his death as well. He had a pretty grand death. I think we can all agree with that one. And finally getting the reveal of Dante and making Emiko a lot more of an interesting character is going to do wonders for the season going forward. So overall, I thought this was a really good episode. Not the best of the season. I think it was definitely, if we're going to rank the episodes, I think this is going to go on the weaker end. But given the fact that Arrow has been so consistently strong, that's not saying the episode is bad by any stretch. So overall, really good episode. So thank you guys for tuning into this episode of DC Central. If you enjoyed it and you want to see more DC content like this, be sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss an upload. And I hope to see you guys again next time.